The overall task of our government in 2023 is to streamline governance, ensure that it's responsive, transformative, and effective. That is what is lacking today. We must show that good governance is aimed at providing needed services to the populace, receiving and admitting constructive criticisms, and moving forward. Given the history of our country, our politics, and governance challenges, securing, uniting, and moving Nigeria forward will require a concerted effort from coercive to consensus approach. Effective governance derives its impetus and strength from use and seek adherence to the rule of law to consolidate democratic institutions and fulfilling social contract between the government and the governed. All this confers political performance and legitimacy to any government. Experience shows that inclusiveness is an essential element of effective public policy making. That means that all groups, especially the ones that are underrepresented today in decision-making process, such as women, youth, and vulnerable, will be consulted and ensure their participation. As a president elected by all Nigerians, the buck stops at my desk. I will be fully responsible for governance and national security decisions and actions undertaken by my administration. Against the backdrop of this, my administration will have identified, like I said, we are going to be working using and mainstreaming the Sustainable Development Goals, but within that, we have also prioritized 7 critical areas we will prioritize while ensuring that we follow all the goals of Sustainable Development Goals. And those areas is to ensure purposeful leadership, is production-centered growth for food security and growth, securing and uniting Nigeria, effective legal and institutional reforms, rule of law, corruption, and government effectiveness, leapfrogging Nigeria from oil dependency to fourth industrial revolution, expanding physical infrastructure through market-driven reforms, unleashing growth, enabling entrepreneurship, and making market-creating innovations, human capital development that empowers competitiveness, robust foreign policy to restore Nigerian strategic relevance. These are things for us that are critical that we want to do. Like I said, our goal is to bring back the trust of people in governance. And that is why I said I will do a brief introduction and then go on to deal with the questions or the issue of concern to the chamber, which I think is the concern of the Nigerian people. Because from what the president and the leader of Mr. Ayo have said, it is for us to deal with the questions that have been brought up. So once again, I thank all of you after this brief introduction and hope that I will now go on to comment on the various issues or as laid down by those who are going to be the panelists. And after that, I'll do a conclusion, which will be my remarks. Thank you. Mine is to always ask the same question. How do governments of other countries get their own liquidity? Because they're going through the same problem we're going through. For government, you've seen government complain every day that we have a revenue crisis, that our revenue to GDP is low. That's what you hear every day. We don't get enough revenue. My answer to that is, it's wrong. Revenue, for you to generate revenue is like going to a bank. You have to pay interest. Then you can get withdraw. You can't go to withdraw without paying it. And how does government pay it? It is the job of government to ensure and to invest in economic growth and create job and employment which will allow people to come and pay taxes. You cannot have 100 million people living in poverty and you're expecting robust revenue. Where are you going to get it from? The number of people, if you use the standard, Nigeria is 200 million people. So the number of people that are supposed to be working, gainfully employed, if you use the world average of 50-60%, it's 120 million. But all of us know that today, the number of people that are gainfully employed and working in Nigeria is about 40 million. So you have about 60 to 70 million people unproductive. So they're not doing anything for you. So what you need to do is start pulling those people out of poverty, have a robust economic growth, and then you will be able to have the liquidity the government needs to function. How does government generate money everywhere is to ask questions, and if I may use just one situation, one country, to give you an example, a big country, let me not leave the Western world, America and Britain, and go to Asia, China. China finances its budget. Today, the last budget that followed was about 4 trillion. Out of this 4 trillion, 3.2 trillion came from taxes. 50% of that came from tax to micro, small businesses. And this segment is providing job. 60% of the job in China. Employed people in China is 800 million, so they are providing 540 million people. In fact, in urban areas, they're about 80%. So it's a simple thing that you need to inject and support the economy for economic growth, which will in turn make people, the more robust your economy is, the more you can earn from taxes and other incomes. That's how government can be liquid. Again, countries borrow money. They borrow money and invest. If you borrow for investment, which is what I was saying before, you have an economic growth, which in turn brings in more liquidity and revenue. And my sister was saying how we're going to deal with the issue of again, resources, because what they're saying is that almost same thing. How are you going to help with the issue of resources? With all this power, everything, and all that, to be more specific, is that at least it's similar to what I had earlier said. You know, however, because you mentioned some specific areas like power, am I sure? Huh? Like you mentioned a specific area of power. Power is something everybody is worried about. It's a critical thing that this country has to be dealt with decisively. I know very well that the federal government of Nigeria, as a government today, have removed power from exclusive list to concurrent list. For me, I will go, and for the government, we will go further than that. We will actually go beyond that, because if you look at our power problem today, we have privatized generation and distribution, leaving the critical link between these two, transmission. That is where we have the, what you can call ineffective and problem that needs to be dealt with. So for me, the first thing I will do is to ensure power is, one is to liberalize transmission. It is critical if you're going to deal with our power. When you do that, you're going to look at the power companies, because the privatization, I don't want to go into the problem of it, but we can support the existing companies that are involved in power to ensure, one, what they are suffering today, to ensure that there's a dedicated gas supply, which is part of their problem today, gas to power, ensure that the generation, transmission, and distribution is properly aligned, have clear certainty of policy and regulatory environment, which is what President mentioned. There is no certainty of regulatory environment for them to operate. You have policies from assault every day. You need to be clear, and they know this is what they are. Support them to have access to funding that is attractive, and deal with some of the tax incentives. Ensure that you deal with immediately issue of embedded power, because you have to come up with some mix. Embedded power and renewable energy. We have to go with all facets. The issue of power will be an emergency that we have to deal with all means possible to ensure that we have power. And I have studied a lot of things. My sister, I was talking about issue of access to the resources to deal with this. You can actually do it involving the private sector aggressively. Government doesn't need to be entirely involved. When the government is going to be involved, like what happened in Egypt, they just give a sovereign guarantee. And that you can deal with when it comes to the issue of power. On how do you start dealing with the systems, which ODX, quite frankly, that is the core of the problem we face today. And that is why I said that what we are going to do entirely is to streamline governance to be responsive, transformative, and effective. What we have today, we are not lack of any, there's clearly well-studied, discussed plans to solve most of our problems as a nation. Documented. So I'm not saying I'm going to be there to be one Superman who is going to come with inventions or things that nobody knows about. What I say that is I'm going to ensure that they are implemented and follow the stipulated guidelines. And that is what is lacking. The political will to deal with issues that is not everywhere. The political will to follow the rule of law, the political will to have certainty of the regulatory environment that attract investment, the political will to ensure that you deal with, like he mentioned, issue of oil theft. Who is stealing oil? People in government. Period. Nobody here can steal oil. Nobody here can steal oil. For you to steal oil, a ship has to come in and load it. And then he has to approve it. So it's simple. These are having like the issue of corruption. The reason why we're not doing well in corruption index is because of the same thing you asked, which I will comment on. So the certainty is what I said I'm offering. The ability to do the right thing and ensure that it's done going forward from 2023. Thank you. Please, let me probably start from the last question of the exclusive list. There's quite a number of things that is not supposed to be there. And that we can deal with as quickly as possible. In fact, it comes handy on what my sister is talking about, 100 days. I think these are the areas to start. There's things federal government don't need to be solely involved, agriculture, education. There's quite a number of them. But there are not things that I can say here and tell you, I'm going to just, but we're going to deal with it beside as quickly as possible. On issue of insecurity, I think also, just like you found it and it's in the Twitter space, I think there's enough answer to him in the Twitter space. If you go there, you'll see it. You know, and I can tell you, he mentioned even something that was not existing when I was in government. He called Bakassi people. Bakassi people have been gone and far before I even came into government, showing somebody who doesn't have knowledge of what happened while I was there. So if people say, so he mentioned that wasn't the case. Let me tell you, whenever an evil come into government, come 2023, one thing that we must decisively and aggressively deal with is the issue of security. Insecurity is number one thing that is impacting Nigerian economic growth today. And you need to deal with it as quickly as possible. And I assure you, when I said I'm going to be in charge, that it stops at my desk, we will deal with it decisively. Insecurity, people will say, so how are you going to deal with it? You need to overhaul the entire security architecture. Ensure that it is put in place aggressively, including having multi-level policing, federal, state, community. Train them properly, equip them properly, and provide them with modern gadgets. It is there. You cannot tell me today that anybody can say that somebody is kidnapped, kept somewhere, and they're using phone to negotiate with his family. In this time and age, if he's sick, they even invite doctor to go and treat him, but police doesn't know where they are. Forget it. I'm not going to take that for one day. Go and check what I did with security in Anambra State. Go and ask people. And I made sure that all communities in Anambra State, no single community in Anambra State, everyone had community security system paid from the office of the governor. We provided every community vehicle, a pickup vehicle, brand new, with gadgets for security purpose. No state in this country had done that. Every community, I didn't say police, army. We provided police, we provided army, but every single community. And I can assure you, we will do exactly that, because at the heart of whatever we're going through today is security, and it must be decisively dealt with. On cost of assets that my sister mentioned, we're going to have asset registry. These are some of the things we want to deal with as quickly as possible. So we'll know the assets of the country and ensure that they're all put into production. Remember that I said we're going to move it from consumption to production. All assets must be productive. No asset will again, and I can tell you, to make it productive, we are going to remove it from government to private sector driven. I'm not talking about transactional private sector driven, genuine private sector driven. Cost of governance, I don't need to tell you more about cost of governance, except to go and verify what happened in Anambra State. That is all I can tell you. I have an allergy for waste. As a person. And the same thing will apply in government. So, when it comes to issue oil theft, I've said it before, there's no way under my watch we will not find solution to oil theft. It's impossible. Even when we talked about what ASU is demanding, that everybody is asking for money. ASU asked, it was 2009, almost 13 years ago, that this agreement was reached by government. And I know it was about 1.3 trillion, out of which Jonathan's government paid 200 billion, remaining 1.1 billion, 1.1 trillion. Let's say that is the situation. The waste, the stealing, would have paid that since. With effortless ease. Look at our oil tax. At a time we critically need every single resources. In July, we are the only country in the world that is not meeting our OPEC production, except Venezuela, because of sanctions. In July, you know, if our production was 1,083,000. So in July, we have 717 shortage daily. Multiplied by 31 days is 22,227,000 barrels. On the average pricing of oil in July, it is 110. So we lost $2,445,000,000 in 1 month. Even like you said about their rate, which I mentioned when I talk about rates. Your official rate, which you said is not available, is 410. The real rate is 690. So if you put 690 and 5 and 410 is 1,100. Let's use the average, 550. If you multiply $2,445,000,000 with 550, it will give you 1,344,750,000,000 naira. And we are still owing, and we are owing ASU 1.1 trillion. 1 month stealing. They can't continue. In month of August, it became worse. Our oil supply in month of August went down to 975. So for month of August, we are losing 825 barrels per day. 825,000 a day. Multiplied by 31 days of August. It will give you 25,652,500. That's what we do. 25 million. Throughout the month of August, oil is sold for 100 million. For 100 naira. $100, sorry. $100 throughout that month. So in the month of August, we lost another $2.5 billion. Multiply it again by 550, it's about 1.4 trillion. It can't continue. It is official stealing. We will deal with it decisively. Even if it means having to, why will government be borrowing money when somebody is there cutting away money? How? Duty waiver. I can assure you that under my watch, all duty waiver, if at all is going to happen, must be clearly defined to impact positively on the people. Not for anybody's benefit, no matter who. You must pay the duty. If you're not going to pay it, it is as a result of the fact that we are bringing in this for the purposes of the people. Like maybe health equipment. So we know we're going to put it not in presidential clinic, but in Jarak clinic. We will ensure that. So the two waivers is this on exchange rate, which you've mentioned, because people have asked questions, how do you control exchange rate? Exchange rate today, as you know, the greatest impact of exchange rate in our system is physical recklessness. Just like our inflation. You can deal with it in 2 items. It's physical recklessness because what you're doing, expensive money, you're printing money to pay for subsidy. If you remove that and remove borrowing for consumption, you stabilize and aggressively going to what I said, moving the country from consumption to production, you stabilize your rate. It's happening with every country. I've said it before. How could a country like Nigeria, with 923,000 square kilometers of land, 200 plus million people, total export last year, even using their own rate, let me now use official rate, is $47 billion. It is unacceptable. Our comparative states I use every day is Vietnam. people. So they live on 1/3 of our land, half of our population. Their export last year is nearly $400 billion. And what did they export? Manufactured goods. So what are we doing here? Malaysia, living again on 329,000 square kilometers of land. A third of our land, 30 million people, which is 50% of our population. Total export last year is about 290 million. And we are doing 400 and something. 447, we are doing 47 billion. The list is, you can go on and on and on. A tiny country like Israel, 22,000 square kilometers, which is, we are 923. So if we give them 23, we still have 900. And 9 million people, we are about 100 and something. If you remove their 9, we are still 200. Total export last year is $59.8 billion. They even did always to wise us. They cannot continue. The list is endless. And that's why I said, if you do that, deal with the issues of physical recklessness, you bring your rate under control. We'll deal with it when we go further with other questions. Thank you very much. I've said it, even in CNN. One is that 50% of the subsidy is corruption. That will be dealt with decisively. Two is that you are aggressively start immediately the issue of any way you can to ensure local refining through modular, through all forms of this, and ensure simply that those in private sector delivery, not government, private sector supporting them, when you remove it, you're going to have that resources to be able to support private sector-led corporations or individuals that want to go into that field, support them and ensure that their finance are put in as quickly as possible. We are oil producing country. Supply them crude in naira. They refine it for domestic consumption. I've said before, we have to stop dollarization of our economy, especially the domestic economy. Under my watch, the emphasis on dollar, if you must operate here, you must charge naira. If you want to charge dollar, you wait and meet us in international space. But here, no dollar charge and no dollar expenditure for government again. We will deal with dollar, we will use it to engage other countries, we use it to do everything. But here, we've seen where that have led us, where airlines charge Nigerians more than they charge from other countries. It will not happen under my watch. What you charge in A is what you charge here, or you can't, you go. If we are going to trek to your country, we trek. Because we have to deal with that, all those issues. So I assure you, subsidy will not be there. And when you remove subsidy, what does subsidy do today? Subsidy is one of those things that are impacting today in your inflation. Because you have huge money being thrown, expensive of money to supply in the system to deal with deficit budgeting of paying for subsidy. You need to remove it. If you remove security today, if if you deal with security today, and your farmers go back to farm, and food prices come down, you remove subsidy and deal with corruption, your inflation will come down. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency.